Matter of fact, I had the Today Show on, and the atmosphere was a gorgeous, beautiful day, particularly after the rainstorm of the night before. And the Today Show was on in my office. Everyone had a TV up in the wall, and watching Matt Lauer and Kate Couric um, begin the reports on what had happened with not knowing exactly when it first came on what was happening, whether it was, I remember there was a discussion about the replay of the 1930s plane flying into the Empire State Building, which was a major event. I think it was in the 50s, building 47. And so there was some, you might say, hesitation in reporting exactly what had happened. I don't think anybody knew exactly what had happened at that point, as shocking as it was. We were producing the late night program nightly at that time. We went on the air in September of '93, so we'd been on just about 8 years. It would have been 3 days later. We went on the air September 13th of '93, and basically getting ready for our 11 o'clock production meeting that morning to put on the show that night. Well, at first there was some confusion about what exactly was going on. And people started to filter in, and some people didn't know what was happening in our offices. I happened to be there early, which for me was kind of unusual to be there that early. Normally I would get to New York around 10:30, quarter to 11 for an 11 o'clock in the morning production meeting. And in retrospect now, 10 years later, it was the plans for the show continued. The pre-production for the show that evening continued, which of course in hindsight seems utterly absurd. And of course we stayed off the air for several weeks. Well, the stunning events lasted to this day, really, but in the immediate aftermath of this incredible, horrific tragedy, the mood was somber when we came back on the air. I suppose we in our show were fortunate that David Letterman had, as David Letterman does, so risen to the occasion of the time. And after that, after his opening remarks when he finally came back on, which was before our show came back on, he had covered it all so masterfully. There wasn't much left to say. There was so much to feel. So the mood was, I suppose I had it a little easier because my role was playing music, and you did try to, there were some adjustments in the music. You did try to reflect the emotional feeling that was in the streets. That's what I remember so particularly. I would walk from my car on the west side over to the east side where the studios were and are today, and the feeling in the street was people walking around dazed, weeks later, still dazed, and a feeling of tremendous solidarity and community, which the jostling and everybody running all over the place was not evident. It was very different in New York City for me, having worked in New York City every day, and so the music we played, I tried to be, in picking the music, I tried to be sensitive to the tenor of that time, and gradually get back into our normal, as normal as you could be, operating routine. There's an oft-told story of Bruce driving his car down here at the beach, and driving past a young guy who yelled out to him, "Bruce, we need you." Actually happened, and it was, I think it's a sentiment that is always directed at Bruce, because there's always been such a time lag between tours. But the poignancy of that, particularly living at the Jersey Shore, where we lost so many people that day, just in this vicinity of this block, probably 10 people, and where I live. And so And I think that sparked something. I can recall in December of 2001, my TV band backed Bruce in a benefit concert down at Convention Hall in Asbury Park, and he had this incident with this young man. It happened, right after 9/11, uh, uh, and I think he had been writing the songs that would become the Rising album at that time, because it was only 3 weeks later we were in the studio recording the Rising. The way we record, he'll take out his guitar and strum it for us, and you have a lyric sheet. So what struck me first, and I always work off the lyrics in terms of my conception of something rhythmically, and that song and all the others on that record, Lonesome Day, just hit you right here, and masterful capturing of the myriad emotions that the world was feeling, particularly in this area. This was, we drove up to about 2 miles from here is Mount Mitchell, which is the highest point on the East Coast from Maine to Florida. It's 280 feet above sea level. And you could see the fires burning for days. And there's a memorial up there now. So this was extraordinarily in your presence every single day. And I had the experience. They talk about the horrible situation of amputees having a phantom sensation. And in my drive to New York every day, I commuted. One of the things that you saw every day was the Twin Towers standing tall and proud there. And suddenly they weren't there, when I went back to work a week later, and it was still that sensation. You saw them. You saw them in the exact spot they were. When my wife and I were first married, we lived right on the Jersey Shore, literally 12 miles across the water from the Twin Towers. And around 4 o'clock in the afternoon, in spring and summer, the sun would hit the towers, and they would turn a bronze color. So, in my experience, I was aware of the World Trade Center towers on a daily basis, all the time, whether driving into New York seeing them as a physical edifice, or from my house, from every room in the afternoon. That's what you saw. There wasn't some abstract idea to me, and the people in the towers that day were certainly not an abstract idea. They were friends, they were neighbors in this community of Middletown, New Jersey, and right over there. I was always very proud to play, citing specifically the Rising album, that album, because of what it meant at the time, in the immediate, few years after 9/11. I'm always proud to play Bruce's music because, apart from being the drummer in the E Street Band for now going on 38 years, I'm a fan. And he writes the songs I want to hear. And today few do, So the pride that I feel in playing that music is palpable. But at the time, you hope that rock and roll is a salvation for people. And certainly what we were doing on that Rising tour in 2002, 2003 felt like that. It felt very spiritual, and that it had a life larger than simply a rock and roll concert, but you were trying to spread the love, the understanding, I've sort of used an analogy or a metaphor, I suppose it is, of the E Street Band being Bruce's colors in an artist's palette. Those days seem so unreal. That was my essential feeling at the time. It was so unreal, and it kind of reminded me of President Kennedy's speech in Berlin, where Ich bin ein Berliner. Everyone was a New Yorker after that. It was a worldwide story, certainly a national tragedy. But New York, you know, if you go down to where they're building the Freedom Tower now, you know, you never forget the events of that day. You know, I believe it, for me, of my, how old was I? Was 50. It was the defining moment of my adult life in terms of never looking at the world the same way again. And I can remember being very angry at obviously the event, but angry at what had become of the world, changed the world. Still feeling obviously the effects today, and you know, how the ugly reality of a lot of the world suddenly was so in your face. Of my young life, the defining moment in terms of going from, you know, yesterday to today was the assassination of President Kennedy. You know, I was 12 years old, and I look back at that time, as most people in my generation do, I think, as such a defining moment, and the steady erosion of a certain civility, a certain essence of civilization that I still think we're seeing today, and it's a sad story. I think the entertainment industry and the people who comprise that industry really helped the country, the world, in the aftermath of 9/11, because, you know, our job is to, as Bruce once said, allow you to dance over your problems for a couple of hours. Well, there was no amount of dancing that was going to get people over this, but if you could, you know, when you know, great art, all art, however you perceive it, and if it helps you, if it enlightens you, if it entertains you, if it gives you an understanding of events that just make no sense, at least to yourself, in the way you're receiving some form of art, I think that is a very useful mechanism for society. I know that on a very primitive level, when I play the drums in a concert and I see people dancing, physically moving, that's my job, is to provide a beat to get them up. It's a very elemental, primitive kind of service. Something I've always been proud of, and you know, with the concert that was performed in New York, that Bruce opened with his gospel acoustic a cappella version of The Rising. That was an amazing concert. All these people coming together, and you had, you know, this was just shortly afterwards, and you saw people in the audience with their, you know, firemen's hats, for example, dancing and smiling and really letting loose, you know, and it showed such a true American spirit of, you know, moving forward. Keep moving forward. The way forward is by, you know, staying true to your inner spirit, which is to progress. And I think that was something that, watching it on TV, really impressed me.